Historical linguistics. Historical linguistics, as it's very clear from its name, studies the history of languages. Historical linguistics, also called diachronic linguistics, is the scientific study of language change over time. So basically, it's diachronic studies. For example, it's study the evolution of a language, how language change in its different level in the period of time, starting from any period and then coming up to the ladder. Modern historical linguistics dates from the late 18th century. So from 18th century, the study of historical linguistics started when there was an awareness to study languages with reference to their history and to see that how languages have evolved. It grew out of the earlier discipline of philology, the study of ancient texts and documents dating back to antiquity. So basically, the basic material for or basic thought for this historical linguistics is the study of philology, in which the language was used with reference to the documentations and the texts found in a certain language. So the principal usage of uses of historical linguistics to describe and account for observed changes in particular languages, how different sounds have changed, how the structures have changed, how languages started as synthetic came to be analytical languages, how different phonological changes took place, structural changes took place, morphological changes took place, how meanings, especially meaning change. For example, we find that at a certain point in time, a word had a certain meaning, but with the passage of time, the meaning changed. So, historical linguistics has the answer to this question, that a certain word was used in a certain meaning at a certain point in time in the past, and now it is used in a certain meaning. So, to reconstruct the prehistory of languages and to determine their relatedness, grouping them into language families. So, in comparative linguistics, we studied about languages families with the help of similarities and dissimilarities. So, this is the task of the historical linguistics, that it reconstruct the languages and then define languages into daughter and sister languages, and then makes the family groups of the languages. To develop general theories about how and why language change. So this is very important for the linguist, that what are the reasons that attribute to the change of certain linguistic facts in a certain language. To describe the history of speech communities. So obviously, when we are talking about language, we are also discussing the history of speech community, the people who are using that language. To study the history of words etymology. So how words started to be formed, where it started from. For example, we look at an English word and then we trace back its origin, and we find that this word came from Latin or Greek or any other language. So this is studied under the very flag of historical linguistics. At first, historical linguistics was comparative linguistics because it started as comparing two languages. Scholars were concerned chiefly with establishing language families and reconstructing prehistoric proto-languages using the comparative method and internal reconstruction. So in the early stages, it was just comparative linguistics, and with the passage of time, it changed into an independent branch of linguistics. Initially, all modern linguistics was historical in orientation, because the way we used to study language was historical. We studied language in its developmental stages. Even the study of modern dialects involve looking at their regions. So when we study dialects, how one dialect is different from other dialects. So we used to study these aspects of dialects with a historical point of view. Ferdinand de Saussure's distinction between synchronic and diachronic linguistics is fundamental to the present-day organization of the discipline. So it was Saussure who said that when we make the history when we study the language historically, we are studying or making a diachronic study, and when we are making history of, when we are studying a language in a certain point in time, then it means that we are studying language synchronically. So in the 20th century, historical linguistics have successfully extended the application of the theories and methods of the 19th century to the classification and historical study of non-Indo-European languages. So in 20th century, really, the development in linguistics was at its peak. So many theories were proved or were given based on the thoughts that were given by the people who studied language in these previous centuries. So historical linguistics, when contrasted with synchronic linguistics, the study of a language at a particular point in time, is often called diachronic linguistics. So obviously, when we are studying a language in its developmental phase, how it has developed up to now, so we are making a diachronic study of the language according to Saussure.